Well, greetings, fellow YouTubers. It's time for me to speak once more about doing business in Ghana. Now, I know I've discussed some of the challenges of doing business over there. First of all, you can't trust anyone but your closest associates or associate, singular. Second of all, there's corruption across all levels of society. Thirdly, the electricity system is extremely unreliable. But these challenges aren't unique to Ghana, and while it's still certainly a developing country, it stands out in Africa as a relatively prosperous place despite its obvious problems. The fact is that, on the whole, Ghana has an incredible number of incentives to offer investors and foreign entrepreneurs, just as it's been offering them for centuries. And I want to speak of these advantages in this video. I've laid them out in 14 points, and some of them will overlap. So before I discuss the advantages of investing in Ghana, I'll give you some basic information about the country. It's about 25,000 square kilometers bigger than the American state of Kansas. It was also the first sub-Saharan African country to achieve independence from a European empire, you could say, in this case, the British Empire, and that was in 1957. Prior to that, during colonial times, Ghana was known as the Gold Coast, for the plain reason that there are lots of gold deposits still there. The current population is 26 million, and the average woman has 4 children. The southern coast is more urban, especially around the capital metropolis of Accra. The middle regions of the country are the most fertile, and the northern region is a lot more dry, harsh, poorer in terms of, its people, and in general less developed up there. It's on bordering the Sahara. It's more isolated from the rest of the country. So let's get into the 14 points I have here for why you should consider investing in Ghana if you have an adventurous attitude and capital, and you think of yourself as a capitalist. Well, then this is for you. Number 1, natural resources. This includes mineral resources like the gold that I just mentioned. There's also oil, although I suppose, that has to do with big corporations, not entrepreneurs, but still there is oil. There's also other natural resources such as lumber, owing to the large expanse of forest land. So I'm sure environmentalists would just love that. But it's an industry there. Big trees there, heavy trees, hardwood. Number 2, favorable tax rate for businesses. And combined with that, generally few regulations. Now, I'm not speaking as an expert in this video, so I don't have the exact figures for you here. I'm just speaking as, someone who's involved in Ghana, so I can't give you the exact figure here, but it's a favorable tax rate. Taxes are generally low or non-existent in Ghana. There's few regulations that you have to deal with when you start a business. Yes, you do have to get a business license, but there's not too much stuff you have to do. It's not a long process like it could be in more developed countries. Reason number 3, agriculture. The potential for agriculture in Ghana. This includes the highly profitable cocoa or cacao tree. The cocoa is the product from which chocolate is made. And this is an export crop. This is a cash crop, as it has been for a long time now. Of course, it came from the Americas, but now you can grow cocoa all around the world. Anyways, southern and central Ghana, they have very fertile soil. This might be some of the most fertile soil in the world. Another profitable export crop is rice, which you can grow during the rainy season. Because there's a lot of water that comes in during the rainy season, it's sufficient to grow rice, and then you can send that to processing factories, which are located on the coast, and then they'll send that rice to other countries that are trying to buy. There's also a potential for exporting other more common crops in the future, like tomatoes and other fruits, like mango, avocado, onion, pineapple, carrots, most other crops. I know there's worries about germs from Africa and being infected in your food, but we already get our food from California or the Americas somewhere coming to your supermarket in New York or Toronto or Los Angeles. Why not get it from West Africa? Okay, we'll see about that. I'm not saying that's a guaranteed, but I believe there's potential there because the quality of these crops is certainly as good as or better than anywhere I've seen in the world. Growing in this fertile soil with all this sun, if well watered, these will be the most succulent crops you've ever tasted. Certainly the best tomatoes that I've ever tasted. I haven't heard so much about the coffee industry in Ghana, but I know it does grow there. So I think there's some potential for growth in the coffee industry as well. I know coffee grows in certain climates, certain altitudes. There are highlands, there are hills in Ghana where you could work out, you know, and they do practice agriculture, like they grow cassava on hillsides. I'm not saying that's good for the hillside; it could cause a landslide. But I'm saying, you know, that might be a potential there too. Number 4, connected to agriculture, is raising animals, raising livestock. And connected to that, cold storage, because most Ghanaians don't have the means to even own a fridge. Some of them might own a small fridge, but nothing too big where you can keep frozen fish, frozen meat, essentially. So if you have the capital to purchase a cold storage unit, that could be your business right there already. I think it costs about 10,000 American dollars to purchase a cold storage. It's like essentially looks like a shipping crate. It is like the same thing you would see on a train or on a big cargo ship. And inside of that, it's refrigerated. And it's like your portable thing all ready to go. And that would enable you to, if you could set it up, and if you could keep it powered, if you had a generator, because you have to understand that the power isn't always reliable. It depends on what the government does. I have faith that the current government is going to make things better. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. It wasn't very good during the Mahama years, I'll admit that. But if you have the capital to operate this cold storage, and better yet, if you're producing the animals yourself, not necessarily, you could be getting the animals from somewhere else. You could be getting the fish from Lake Volta. If you have that cold storage unit, guaranteed people are going to come and buy it. As long as you have common sense as to where you set it up. Guaranteed, because you will be supplying local demand, of course. Maybe not so profitable in terms of an export crop, but this will be a guaranteed thing. Animals, cold storage, this is a guaranteed avenue of growth. Maybe not so lucrative, but it will grow. It's guaranteed to grow because you are satisfying something that people want on a basic level: their food, their meat. Ghanaians eat a lot of meat. They particularly like goat meat, also fish, a lot of fish, and other things too, like pork, chicken, all of that stuff. Not too much beef in Ghana. There is, though, not too much. Number 5, this is a politically stable country. So consider that. And a lot of Africa is not politically stable. That's often why Africa gets the bad reputation. This is not Sierra Leone. This is not even Nigeria with its Boko Haram. There's no ongoing war in Ghana. There never has been. There's only been some coups, the last of which was like in the early 90s. So they've been generally a democratic country. I mean, you can be cynical about democracy all around the world, and sure, you know, there's corruption, like I said, but what country doesn't have corruption? What country, you know, doesn't have problems with democracy? Ghanaians are generally peace-loving. They're a peaceful country. They appreciate their democracy. They appreciate their country. They don't want to conquer any other country. They want to hold on to what they have. They realize that they have a good thing going on. And they've also, I would point out, successfully protected their country from the Ebola virus, which was ravaging Guinea and Sierra Leone and what's that other country it was ravaging? Sorry, let me just see here on the map. It was affecting a few other countries: Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea. Yeah, so Ghana's already between Cote d'Ivoire, so it's a little buffered from that. It's not too far from Nigeria either, which is a prosperous country too, but has a lot more problems, I'd say, than Ghana does. So that's one thing to consider. You know, it's generally one of the most peaceful countries you can think of in Africa that's also developing and also growing. The 6th reason I would list is a growing population and a growing economy. So I know growing population can often cause strains, but here we've been seeing a growing economy as well, which is good, and growing ties with the global community, and in terms of trade, export, import as well, importing. I'll get to that later in this video. But growing economy, the GDP, and I know the GDP is not always a perfect measure of growth, but it has been around 3% annual GDP growth for the past 3 years. I checked the CIA World Factbook website for these statistics, and they're up to 2016, so I don't know what their projection is for 2017, but it's been around 3%, so that's a pretty steady growth. I know banks are expanding very rapidly in Ghana too. I know that's not always a good thing too, but there's a lot of this services sector growth. I'm not focusing on the service sector in this video, but service sectors are growing too. But personally, I find banks boring. I find all of that stuff boring. I'm more interested in real stuff you can do, physical stuff, hard assets, like the stuff I'm already discussing. Number 7, cheap labor, very cheap labor. It's very easy to employ people, like I said before, little or no regulations. And in terms of cheap labor, just to give you an example, when we were building this house, the day rate of a day laborer, it would be about 12 Canadian dollars, or maybe let's say 10 or 11 American dollars per day. And that's a good salary for them. They often don't have work anyways, because there's a lot of young men, there's a lot of youth. They've often had some education, but there's no jobs like there are. And the same issue there are for millennials in developed countries. There are also not a lot of jobs right now for these young men. So getting day laborers and employing them, at least in a rural town, is incredibly easy. Labor is not a problem. This is not America in the colonial times when it was hard to get labor. There's lots of labor there, but also lots of space, lots of growth. I mean, there's 26 million. I don't know, that's a lot of people, but there's still plenty of space there. Like I said, it's bigger than Kansas, this country. Number 8, potential for tourism. This is something that I'm personally interested in myself, being a Westerner involved in this country. Not necessarily in tourism, but volunteering and kind of travel agency sort of stuff. This potential includes guest houses, travel agencies, like I said. It also includes the potential for volunteer organizations, and made this point in many videos. Some people might not like it, but volunteering is more or less a business. It is a business, and that potential is there, just as strong as it ever was in Ghana. And Westerners, they like to go into tropical countries, especially during the winter, but they're often afraid of Africa because of its reputation for being unsafe. Yet plenty of tourists already flow to South Africa, they flow to Tanzania and Kenya, they often go on safaris there. But I see no reason why the same should not occur in Ghana, which currently still only receives a small trickle of Westerners. Now, what would attract them to Ghana? Well, like all the things I mentioned so far, it's a peaceful country. People are friendly, warm. It's nice tropical climate, if that's what you're looking for. But specifically, the attractions are the following. The Atlantic coast, the ocean. You have very nice beaches. You have historical sites like Cape Coast Castle and Elmina, albeit kind of ominous historical sites because those were slave forts, but they're really interesting. They're certainly educational if you want to learn about your history, as well as the rainforest of Kakum National Park, which is also in the coastal region. So you can see the rainforest, you can see historical sites, you can go to the beaches. Then, if you go into the interior of the country, you have beautiful landscapes, hiking opportunities, especially in the Eastern Highlands, including in the Eastern Highlands of Volta region, the tallest and most beautiful waterfall in West Africa. And also there's the Tafi Atome Monkey Sanctuary. There's Lake Volta, which is the world's largest artificial reservoir. You can see it from space. Not to mention the cultural immersion that backpackers are seeking. If you want to go to the towns, you probably have to do that with an organization, but backpackers can go in on their own and experience these things. There's also unlimited positions for international volunteers in schools, daycares, and clinics. If you have a mind starting a volunteer organization, like I have, well, I'm sort of still in the beginning stages, but if you want to house the volunteers, feed them, generally take care of them, set up their placement, that's an opportunity just waiting for you. There's also the opportunity to go on safari in Mole National Park in the north, in case you were wondering about does Ghana have safaris? And so they don't have the animals that East Africa would have because it's more of a wooded, forested part of Africa, you know, the big animals, the herds, they like the plains. But there are, if you go to Mole, and I haven't been there, but I know you can see elephants, some lions, all sorts of other animals. It's just more of a wooded kind of, but yeah, they'll take you on the safari there, and so it's that option does exist. Number 9, English is widely spoken. So so for Westerners, you know, English is the primary language, but that's also good for doing business in it's the language of government, it's the language of business, it's the language of tourism. So English is widely spoken there because it was a British colony, and the English did introduce, and the missionaries before them did introduce the English language. And so that's going to make things easier from a business perspective and also from the tourism perspective. And reason number 10, connected to the English, I'm going to talk about Christianity. And a lot of people might not like that I'm bringing up Christianity, but 71.2% of the population is Christian. And some historians like Neil Ferguson, who I respect, would make the argument that capitalism goes very well with Christianity, and that's something I've observed. I mean, maybe not always. I mean, if you look at a country like Japan, I don't know if that's very Christian, but, well, they have some Christianity. But Japan did kind of copy the West, you know, beginning in the late 19th century. So very Christian. Capitalism and Christianity have often gone together. A lot of it has to do with the work ethic, and I don't know, they form good partnerships because Christians do business with each other. And it's based on trust and doing the right thing for your fellow Christians. So it actually, in my opinion, it goes well it bodes well for business. Number 11, growing import markets. So I may have mentioned some things you can export, like cocoa or rice or gold, maybe a few other, you know, natural resources, you know, produce, but also flipping it around, growing import market, because this is a growing population, this is a growing economy. So importing what? Well, products from China, just like Donald Trump would rail against that happening in the US, but here in Ghana, not at all an industrialized country. So anything specialty they have to import. So this includes specialty construction materials, and construction industry is needing materials to feed it because housing is being built, cities are growing. Products from China also includes phones, power generators, you know, like a gasoline generator when the power goes out, if you can afford it. Housewares, other so-called department store items, you know, like towels, electric appliances, anything made of plastic. And also clothing, especially for young people, like including their shoes, you know, like young men, 18-year-olds, they want to get the Nike Air or the Air Jordan, and so you get that. If you can arrange to get that from China, you definitely be able to sell it at a good markup in Ghana. Now, besides China, there's a strong market for trucks and automobiles, or motorbikes, specifically motorbikes from both Japan and Korea. Now, often these vehicles are second-hand, but I believe they could be sold new if a savvy businessman opens up a warehouse in the right area. And sometimes you even see some of these secondhand, you even see like the Korean writing on them in Ghana. So I thought that's kind of fun. But yeah, I particularly believe there's a strong demand for motorcycles based on what I've seen, because a motorcycle is more practical for Ghana. It's cheaper because not everyone can afford a whole automobile. So often they get the motorbike. And with all the way the roads are, sometimes having a motorbike is just more practical. You're going to get through a more narrow space or up and down potholes, you know. So it's more practical and cheaper. I think there's also a market for technology coming into Ghana from Europe. If you want to import European technology, specifically German cars and vans, especially of the Mercedes-Benz brand. Number 12, the opportunity to invest in factories in Ghana. So this may be building on the last point about there not being any industrialization in Ghana. Well, very, very little. There's certain processing factories like rice processing facilities, but nothing too complicated. There's no real manufacturing that I know of. So you could either play the import market, or you could really go out on a limb and start investing in actually manufacturing. And so that's more of a long-term investment. And you could be producing any of the items I just mentioned. That's the fact. There's just not a lot of manufacturing in Ghana right now, but the population is growing, the economy is growing, so people are having more wealth. And I think they're ripe for at least some of these items to be produced in Ghana. There's no reason you can't be, producing towels or certain plastic wares. Why not produce it in Ghana? It just requires the capital to get it going and then figure out what your demand is and who your market's going to be. Number 13, and this wouldn't concern too many entrepreneurs, but if you happen to be a business person involved in solar panel technology, then this country gets a huge amount of sun every year. I'm sure it even in the rainy season when the sun is shining, it's extremely strong, and so getting solar panels in there, and I'm not really sure. I just think there must be some potential for some sort of solar industry or something going on in Ghana, because that's just a natural benefit. You got to take advantage of that sun. It's stronger. It's an equatorial. It's only 7 degrees north of the equator, so it's very strong. You can take advantage of that energy. So there you have it. Oh no, those are 13. Number 14, final point here. You have the potential to build rental housing, or just housing in general, but specifically this housing to accommodate a growing population. For example, there are going to be more universities coming. They're already being built. They're already being laid out. So there's going to be a need to house students. So you could get into building student apartments. Very simple. And I can tell you that the price of building a house in Ghana is going to be a lot less than what it would be in Canada or the United States. I don't know about Europe. I imagine Europe would be even more expensive, but I can tell you that to build a 5-bedroom house, like I did, it's only going to cost you 20% of what it would cost you in Canada, in a rural area, let's say. And then none of those taxes, none of those regulations, none of that bullshit. Libertarians, capitalists, take heed, I guess. Well, depending if you're into that stuff. So, in what have I invested in Ghana? Just to conclude here, well, I've invested, I mentioned this guest house, a 5-bedroom guest house. It's very nice. It's in a rural town. I'm going to use it with my good friend, my good Ghanaian friend, of course, my confidant, my associate, Blinksman. We're going to have a volunteer organization. If it doesn't pan out as a volunteer organization, it'll just be a guest house. We'll use it. We'll rent it out to a company. We'll do something with it. It has its own borehole, so it'll always have water. And we recently imported a big generator. It's called a plant. We got that from Togo. Now, Ghana has recently changed its tax laws and its import duty. They've reduced everything drastically. So it's possible that in the future we won't have to get stuff from Togo anymore, because up to this point in time, Togo, the city of Lomé, which is nearby Ghana, it's right next to Ghana, they have a free port, or at least a cheap port, where the sort of stuff I was talking about, German cars, Japanese technology, useful technology, that stuff would come into Togo, and so you have to get into Lomé and get into that market there and then bring it into Ghana, which has its inconveniences, but you'd be saving money for sure. But now it looks like you'll be able to import it straight to Ghana, so you won't have to worry about that stuff. So this house, we have it hooked up with this plant, this generator. Why? Because of the electricity problem. So we'll have electricity 24/7. You'll never have to worry about that. If the power goes off, the plant will go on. The plant will have its own shed, so it won't be making too much noise and won't wake anyone up. So we'll have water year-round, all the time. We won't have to rely on the municipal water or the government electricity system. The house is very nice. Like I said, 5 bedrooms. It has an office. It has an upper patio. Has a huge yard. Has a great view. Anyways, that'll be like a guest house for housing international volunteers, and then we'll be working at building partnerships in the communities, schools, clinics, daycares, even agriculture, even construction projects. We'll be offering the full package. And I was a volunteer myself originally in Ghana, so I know this business already exists there. We also have purchased some vehicles, including a used Mercedes-Benz 2009. I'm not bragging about having a Benz. I think a Benz is just a practical car. You got to have a good car for Ghana because the roads aren't good. because of the potholes and all of that. You need something reliable. You need something powerful, heavy, that's going to handle the turns very well on the roads. We also got a Hyundai, kind of a smaller one from Asia, because it's a tiny one, but a good one. It has air conditioning and it's a taxi. It has the taxi colors. We may use it as a taxi. We may use it for our organization because, we're going to need to have some vehicles. We also got a van, a Nissan van, we also got this from Togo. That's imported from Japan. That's for ferrying. That's for transporting volunteers from the airport in Accra to this town where we're living, where I don't need to mention it in this video because there's no need for me to mention it right now, but maybe later. But yeah, because it's a 3 or 4 or 5 hour drive. It's a long drive, so we have a nice van, 14-seater. We have to take care of people. If people want to come to Ghana, then we're going to take care of you, and you'll have a good experience staying in our nice house, and you'll be culturally immersed. And we also have these animals. We have, I lost count of the goats, but there were 8 last time I counted. We had some chickens. We had about 185 chickens, and we sold them to a government school about more than a year ago, and the government school still hasn't paid us. So that's not a good thing, but they'll pay us eventually. So you see, at least I'm being honest with you here. But we have the pigs. We started with 5 pigs, little ones, tiny ones, 3 females, 2 males. That was in early 2015. Now there's 21 of them. So those 3 females mixing with the 2 males, now there's 21 pigs, because one of them just gave birth the other day. One pig gave birth to 8 little pigs. So I'm a city person. I'm a city folk. You can see I don't know much about this, but I'm just, relating it to you because it's relevant to the subject. We've also have a vegetable farm, peppers and tomatoes. And this spring, when the rains come, we should be starting rice cultivation. So we're already getting the land ready for this. So all of these things, my associate and I, we don't have to be there all the time doing it, but we have to be keeping an eye on it, managing it, and the labor is cheap. People need work to do all this stuff. You just need to have the capital to get it started in the first place. We have other business ideas too, but there's no need to discuss all of them here because we haven't exactly started them yet. And I hope you found that entertaining or educational. And that's all I have to say for now. Hasta luego, amigos.